Hi, I'm John Leasure at Florence Regional Arts Alliance at 120 Maple Street in beautiful downtown Florence. Today I'd like to paint for you a seascape from start to finish. So anyway, one of the things that we do in our classes is I try to use oils because it gives the students a little more time to work rather than things drying too fast. So that's what we're going to use today. And so let me turn the camera and I'll show you what we're going to do today. Alright, so what I did so far is I covered this 16 by 20 canvas with a little bit of a yellow acrylic, and I have a little cutout that I put on here that's going to represent the sun. And then I have a little dark acrylic to give us a few reference points for some distant rocks. So anyway, after I did that, I then covered the canvas with a little thin coat of a walnut oil and wiped it completely dry with a paper towel so that we have just very little oil on there, because that's all it takes to make the paint move. So with that, I'll just get right into it. So let me take a smaller brush. I'll take a little bit of white and a little bit of red, make a nice sort of a pink color here. And I'll just start out by throwing some colors up on the canvas, and then we'll just kind of move them around. So we have the yellow up there, and now what's nice about the yellow is it's not going to mix with our color. So it'll be okay as far as when we go to use some blue in the upper portions of the sky. We won't have to think too much about that as far as turning green on us or anything like that. So it just makes a nice, easy to do type of painting. So with that, now I'll just take my brush and go right into a little bit of white and crimson and make just a really nice little pink. It's a little bit deeper pink than the red that we started out with. And as I said, I'm just going to get started by laying in a few colors, and then we'll just kind of move them around a little more, maybe use a little white with that. So as I get up a little higher here, I'll stop with the pink color. And I'll put that brush down, and then I'll pick up this 3/4 brush and take a little bit of white and maybe a phthalo blue and just make a very light blue. And I'll kind of finish off the top portion of the sky with that blue. So as I said, I'm just going to throw the colors up here, and then we'll work on getting them going. And maybe I'll even take the tiniest touch of a ultramarine blue as well, just as it gets darker and darker as it goes up towards the sky. As you get out from the atmosphere, things would get a little darker. So that looks pretty good. So now I have all my colors just placed up in the sky, and now I'm going to take this 2-inch brush, and maybe I'll start out with a little touch of this Naples yellow and maybe a little bit of white with that. I'll create a very nice pale color. And where I left off, I'll start to work some of these colors together and just create the feeling of a few clouds right along in here. Just real simple, no big deal, using just a little bit of white and some of that Naples yellow just to create a nice soft sky. And we'll just kind of stay away from the sunlight just a little bit. And now as I work my way upward, I can start to work into some of the blue, and the red or the pinks with the blue look really nice. They tend to work together really well. There. I'll just make a nice sort of a transition from the sunlight right up into the sky up in there. And so I'll go back to maybe a little more crimson with that. And so the crimson and the blue make a nice light lavender color, and it makes a nice transition to finish off that sky. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just kind of keeping it simple. Maybe a little more red right in here. A little white. Right along in there. And I also have a little piece of masking tape on here to give me a nice horizon, straight horizon line we can use. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if I wanted to top off some of those clouds, I would just take a small brush and also work on those a little bit. So now I can take my brush and go right in, take a nice fan brush and go right into just a little bit of white, maybe a little touch of that yellow. And around the sun area, we can just brighten that up, maybe just a little bit. There we go. Just kind of give it a light dusting. And if we want, we can also add maybe a little bit of a sunlight that's going to be up, hitting against the bottom of some of these clouds if we want to. Okay, that'll do that pretty well, just like that. And with that, now I can take the tape off the picture. Okay, so now I can actually take my knife and I can take and pull off that little piece of tape that I put on there, which represented the sun. That's kind of neat. Automatically you have this nice bright little area, and then I can take a little bit of titanium white on my finger and maybe just give that a little extra brightness right there. Okay, so while I'm still at it, along in here we got to remember that whatever's happening in the sky is also reflecting down in the water. So what I'll do, while I still have some of those nice colors on my brush of the reds and pinks, I'll begin to leave this area right here nice and bright. So let me represent that a little bit for you with a little white right here. And on this side I'll take a little of that red, pink color, and I'll begin to pull some of that inward, leaving this area where the sun is shining kind of open, so we don't want to destroy all that nice yellow. We can use that. So there we go. We just kind of go right over that, go right over the rock just a little bit. We're gonna paint that up in a little bit. So in a sense, we get this nice feeling of the same colors that are up in the sky working down into our water there. So I'm using a little bit of the pink here, both sides, and then I'll grab a little bit of that phthalo blue and white, and out here, same thing, as we get away from the warmth of the sun, we would see more of the water in some of its blue color. So I'll pull that inward. Really nice when it mixes with that crimson. It makes a nice little lavender color. And then we can touch it up with a smaller brush. We can kind of bring it up a little closer to the horizon. Kind of clean that up just a little bit. There. Real simple to do. It's okay to have a few streaks in that. Some of that will represent the movements of the water as it's coming forward. Okay, that looks really nice. Now, a little farther away, we'll have some land out there in the distance. So I'll take one of my smaller brushes and I'll go right into a little bit of the crimson and maybe a little of that blue. And so we're kind of representing something that's far, far away. Maybe the hillsides like we have here in Oregon. So it's just a little bit on the blue side. So maybe I'll add a little more crimson, maybe even a tiny touch of yellow. And that'll kind of maybe green that up just a little bit. So way far away we have the hillside coming in. A little more, maybe just a little touch more of the yellow with that. Just to make it feel like the hills are a little greener, but like I said, they're still far away, and between here and there there's more air, so it doesn't feel quite as green as we would think looking at those trees. So it's all far away, just a little bit of an indication of some land, and then with our bigger brush we just pull up little tiny short strokes, create the feeling of these little trees that are far away, typical Oregon coast. And if you really wanted to get into it, you could almost put a little lighthouse out there on the ledge. That would look nice. Okay, so just kind of bring that down and leave that be. About like that. Okay, so now we'll continue to work forward. We'll do one more thing here. So what I'd like to do now is take the same brush and out here on, actually I'll take a fan brush and I'll take a little bit of the red and white. So just like we have up in the sky, so it would actually be reflecting down into the wet sand. So on either side of the sun, we have the sunlight here, we have a little bit of yellow, so on either side of that, I'll start to pull in, or put down actually, a little bit of that red color. Put down a little of that. And then because we have the land, so I would start to transition into a little bit of a sienna. Maybe a little white with that, kind of knock it down just a little bit. And right where I left off, I'm going to bring in some of that sienna. Had a little blue in the brush, that's totally okay. So on either side of that, I'll add a little sienna. And then I can actually add a little sienna with the blue. Nice complementary colors of a blue and a deep orange. And then I can finish off this outer edge with that color. So I'm just laying in the color, get it laid out. And then a little over here. Especially over here we have the rock, that main rock that's going to be casting a shadow. Okay, about like that. Maybe just a little more of that red back here. There we go. And then with a nice big brush, I'll take it, and always going across from the outside. I try not to touch down along the bottom section because that would just leave a touchdown mark. So we'll just take this brush and we'll pull across a little bit like that. Start to level it out. Touch and lift, go to the other side and just kind of touch and lift, pull it across. There. Okay. Now I kind of think maybe I need a little more of that red crimson color right in this area right here, just to kind of set it on fire a little more. There. It's always better to add more paint. Go slow, because a lot of times the theory is once you put the paint on there, it's a little harder to take it off. It's always better just to go slow. Add a little bit as you go. It's like salting your meal. You don't want to go too quickly. You know, take a taste, put a little more on, take a taste. Don't try to do it all at one time. Okay. And then one final thing there, I'll add a little more pure white right here to indicate the sun directly underneath there. Put that in and we'll just kind of brush that across. Kind of get that going. And then we'll hit it with the big brush again. Always going from the outside. There. Okay, now we'll get on to something else. So now what I like to do is to start to address many of the other issues by laying it out and make kind of a drawing of what I'm going to do. And all the other little details can be taken place later as we go. So I'll take a little bit of white on a nice little round brush, and I'll begin to show the top of my wave that's going to be here and how it's going to interact with this rock. Then I can also show where I'm going to have the bottom of this wave, which would be down in here, and then there'll be the few pieces of wave back here in the background as they're going to be coming forward. So now I have just a quick idea of where I'm going with this picture. So I'll now switch over to a 3/4 flat brush, and I'll grab a little bit of the phthalo blue and a touch of crimson. And down in here, I'll start to lay in a little bit of a darkness. Where the water is generally piled up, it's usually a little darker down below, and then I'll just kind of let that brush go dry. I just let it go dry a little bit. And while I still actually have a little of that on my brush, I think in the background, I'll even show some of these approaching waves coming. Now it'd be kind of nice, kind of get that out of the way. Now, over here in the middle section, I think what I'll do is I'll take a little white and maybe this little touch of this teal color. I think that would look pretty nice. And I'll indicate where the eye of this wave is going to be. Right about in here. About like that. Just kind of let that go dry. Work it out to the other color. Like that. Now the whole thing is that by just letting it go dry and mix with the other color, you can begin to work a lot of these things together. So what I'll do next is take, say for example, my knife, and I'll laying the white out flat, I can grab a little bit of that color with my knife, and now I can show a little bit of an angle here of where the front of that wave is actually going to be as it's coming forward. So this will be the leading edge of the water. And so I'm just trying to complete this idea of where placement of where things are in the picture. Okay, so now the next thing would be to just take a little fan brush and begin to very lightly work together some of that color. And instead of going upward this way into the wave where it would just keep going and going, I generally try to start going crossways to kind of blend those colors together where they meet, and just kind of bring it right out along in here like this. And what's nice is we have that yellow back in there, so we can always just rub through a little bit of that and reveal a little bit of this green color, because the yellow and the blues getting together will create this nice little green for us. So we'll get into that. There. Just kind of pulling things along right in there. Bring it right up to that leading edge that I drew. Right along in there. Okay, now let's also take maybe a little more of the white with that fan brush. And now I can also show maybe on this side of the rock is that it's going to be crashing through from the other side. So we didn't have to have a lot of detail going on here on that side. Kind of leave it more into shadow, so maybe I'll go back to a little darker color. Just leave it a little bit into shadow. A little bit of shadow. Because water casts shadows itself. So the same thing. So now I'm going to get an idea of where is that wave, the top of the wave, and how is it coming over. So we can show the light kissing along the top of that wave, and then the fingers of some of that trying to come over of that wave. And then it's going to go back to the fan brush, and then it's going to hit that rock and splash right up into the air a little bit. So the first thing as we do is try to get some of the little shadows. So we have a little blue on our brush and a little bit of crimson, because as water splashes up into the air, it like a rainbow, it creates two sides to the rainbow, the cool side and the warm side. So if I have two different colors in my fan brush, such as a crimson and white and a phthalo blue and white, I can create that effect of the cool side and the warm side together. And I can just put that in the splash. Gives a nice feeling of the water trying to break it down into those colors. There we go. Okay. And now we can get into kind of detailing that just a little more. And if we want to, we can pull in a little yellow, maybe right there in the center. Yeah, just kind of work it down into the wave. So just in the thinnest part of the wave, we would have that nice bright area. So I like to work with my fingers sometimes. It's kind of a nice thing. You kind of get really attached into working with the painting. It makes a nice effect. And so we go right across the top, anywhere where it maybe feels it would be thinner, across the top where the light is actually shining through the water. That's where I would probably have a little bit of that going on. And even out in the distant wave a little bit. See, we already have the yellow from the acrylic, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But maybe over here we can have just a little bit of that yellow working for us right along in there. Okay. And this will all come together as we get into some of the details here in just a little bit. So, alright, so then now the next thing I would do is start even just using my finger and start to get a little idea of how that water is going to move up into the wave. Okay, just like that. Now I can go back down to a liner brush, and first thing I think I need to do on this wave is first indicate the shadow of the wave. For example, to understand how that this part is in front of this part, we need a shadow right in this area of the wave to give just a little bit of a separation in that area. So I'll just take a liner brush and I'll take a little bit of the blue, a little bit of the crimson color, and very, very lightly right across this area I will put in a little indication of a shadow, and that begins to separate the front from the back of that wave. And you can even carry a few little bits of that shadow down along the wave. So see, it begins to show the front from the back and all these little fingers that are starting to come over. Okay, so that looks pretty good right there. Now let's do one other thing here. We'll take a little more white and indicate a couple of other things that are happening here. Maybe a little bit of white right along this wave here. The sunlight in the distance is shining upon that. So kind of finish off with a little bit of that. Maybe even a little bit of the white way out in the distance, kind of hitting on the horizon out there. And also there would be that bit of a horizon line, or actually the shoreline across the back, hitting on the shores of that distant hill. Alright, about like that. Just kind of clean it up and get things ready for the next details that will start to work into the picture. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I would do is start to work on this rock and how it relates to the picture. So the best way to do that is I would take a smaller brush. You could take a 3/4, or in this case is 1/2 inch, and I would take a little bit of the phthalo blue, maybe even a tiny touch of the ultramarine, with a little bit of sienna. So we have a nice blue with a very deep orange, and I already have dark up here, so I don't need to paint a lot. But what I need to do is begin to sharpen up some of these edges, because right now, with as it being so soft and we painted over the whole thing, it has a tendency to look like it's faded and far away, but we don't want that. It's up close a little bit. So as I get down in here and I come up to some of this white that I put down here, I can just touch it a little bit to make it look like it's somehow going back underneath all the foam of that wave. And as I'm up here in the front, I want to just keep the edges kind of sharp, and it pushes everything in the distance, it pushes it back. You can just kind of bring it right up in there like that. Now I already have a lot of dark on the rock as far as the acrylic goes, so I don't need to go overboard with too much of the paint. I don't need to have it real thick or anything. And also I see I can show snippets of that rock coming right out of the foam on that wave as it's crashing there anyway. About like that. So a little bit more, bring it down. Now before I get too far, I want to add one other little bit of dimension to this rock here. And what I'll do is I'll take one of these smaller brushes and I'll grab some of this foam color that I have up here, and maybe just kind of add a little of that up in here. And what'll happen is as I go to paint this rock and bring it down to that, that will make it look as if we have a rock in front of that rock. So it adds little bits of detail, information that becomes, you know, a little more pleasing to the eye. It gives a little more dimension to that picture. Just kind of like that. Just kind of work my finger, work that white color like it's a little bit of a leftover of maybe the wave that had just coming around the other side. So give it a little bit of a foggy feel right in there. Then I can just bring that rock color right up in front here, much darker. Yeah, kind of like that. Okay, and just kind of let that go down into here. And then I can start playing around with the fact that there's going to be a little bit of a shadow, this rock casting a shadow down in here. So I'm using a little bit of the blue, ultramarine blue, and sienna. And just very lightly, I don't need to go overboard with the paint so I don't have it smearing all over the place, but just to indicate the shadow of this rock. So I'm just using the skill to try to make it best I can look like a mirror image of what's up above, like that. And we'll just kind of pull it back and forth, kind of level it out again with the ground, about like that. Just kind of keep it under control. There we go. Because we can move right through it with our knife and put some other colors through it, but the whole thing is there. We want to create that feeling of a shadow right up front. Could even show a few bits of rock over here coming through from this other splash, so it makes sense as to what's happening over here. So a little blue, a little sienna, there we go. Just kind of using our imaginations to help create that feeling. So on this side, we're definitely in shadow. So I guess while I still have that color in my brush, I'll take a little bit of the white and on my brush with the color and even a little of that sienna and make a light color and show maybe the sunlight hitting up against this rock just a little bit right in there. Kind of give it a feeling of an edge to it there. There, maybe even this one just a little bit. Okay, and then just before I go any farther, now I can get into using a clean fan brush. I can take a little bit of white and just using the corner of my fan brush, I can just twist and turn and show that splash hitting that rock without making too much contact with that darker color. And that kind of helps to finish off the rock. And so we just, you know, you always got to make those little sounds that, as they say, you got to make those little sounds. Kind of helps out when you're painting. There. Okay. More and more as we get into this painting, get into all the fun parts. So I'm going to take a very soft brush and very gently I'm just going to soften up the splash a little bit. It makes it just feel like a nice mist as it strikes that rock. There. And so now we're able to go back and to do and fix up all these little things, like maybe back in here we needed a little bit more red out in the background here. Maybe that bright sunlight is hitting very bright along that horizon right in there. So we can put that in and then go back to that little brush and just kind of clean it up just a little bit, a little cleaner, like that. Okay, and we could even have another little line here of blue, maybe showing another approaching wave or a swell there happening. Okay, Now we get into the fun part, all the little colors that we can use. So I think in this, before I get going there, I'll add maybe just a little more pure white right there below the sun. Kind of help to brighten that up just a little bit again. Sometimes you have to go through and do a couple little passes to get things just the way you want them. Take a cleaner brush and go across. Okay. There, that ought to do it. Okay, now I would go into trying to have a lot of beautiful little colors here. So I'll take this smaller round brush and maybe we'll take a bit of the Naples yellow and a little bit of the red or crimson, white, and just create a nice color that would mimic what is happening up in the sky is somehow reflecting on the foam down below. And just begin to work some of that color into the wave, and as it's laying there, it begins to be drawn up into the wave. Actually, sometimes I sometimes just like to cut to the chase and grab my knife, get a little color, that making a little bit of a Naples yellow with the red, and just add those colors on here. And then I'm able to go back and move them around and put them up into the water as I see fit. There. So go back to my smaller brush again and just kind of work them up into the wave. It's just sort of one of those little things you got to go back and forth with and find the right colors that just tend to work for you. But we do want to have some of the colors that are up in the sky in this wave. So, and as I said, it just seems like working with my fingers sometimes generally works better. It's just one of those things. Art should be fun. I try to show people, don't be afraid to step outside and do something different as you feel. I only try to guide you in these classes. I don't really try to control what you're doing, but just to the best of my abilities, help you in whichever way I can to create the picture as we display it. Okay, a little more of that yellow up in here. There. And so that'll just be the beginning phases of this color. Okay. So now we do have, remember, a little bit of that yellow that's already set down in that acrylic. So I can go back with a little bit of a paper towel and I can reveal some of that beautiful yellow that we already have in the picture. So that's the whole purpose of the yellow down first, is we never have to worry about it mixing with some of the other colors and becoming green, such as blue and yellow. So we have that yellow, it's dry, it's not going to mix with any other color, and it just helps to add to the picture a little bit. Okay, so now what I'll do is continue on with some of the details. So I'll take my knife, and the white is pulled out flat, and I'll grab a little bit of that paint. And same thing, from this angle of distance, go right through that shadow. Now over here it's going to be still in a shadow state where that rock is making its shadow. So as I come out of that shadow, then I can be a little brighter. And I can have more texture to it as it comes down this way. And out of that, then we can take our little brush and I can begin to pull color out of that. So as always, it seems that the devil is always in the details. So, you know, taking my fan brush, I pull back from that area I did with my knife and pull it back as if it was going out to sea again. Just kind of keep it simple there. Pull this back a little bit. There you go. Just start to have movements on the sand because water has continued to wash in and to wash out. There. See, and it's nice and bright right below where the sun would be shining. And so now we can continue on with this. So let's take a small brush again, and let's show the leading edge emphasized once again on this wave. So I'm going to use a little bit of phthalo blue and white right across this edge here. Helps to add a little bit of the shadow first. And then on top of that, I'm going to get more pure white right where the sun would be. And have the top edge of that water that's coming in. Right like that. And, you know, just like you would put your hand on a table, you'd have a little shadow line right under your hand. I'll take my liner brush again and get a little bit of phthalo blue, crimson, and right underneath that wave we'll have just a little bit of a shadow line indicating the thickness of this water as it lays on the sand. So there's all these little things that you learn as you go in painting. So go back to our fan brush again, and just at the very top of that, I'll pull it up into the wave. Start to clean that up just a little bit. Right around this rock down here, of course it's in shadow, so I would have a little more of that blue and white. There, just kind of in shadow. A little bit of turmoil happening around that rock there. Okay. We can also make sure we have a little more action happening out here. There had been other waves that have washed in and washed out. I'll keep it a little more on the blue side or the shadow side. And then of course there is this rock right over here that we drew. So we'll take a little bit of the phthalo blue, a little of the crimson, maybe a little sienna, and I'll put that rock right in here. Just kind of like that. So what that does is it helps to push everything back. All these little things that we do help to push back and to show where everything is, little placement. Now I can actually just think about cutting that in half and show a little bit of a shadow or a reflection of that rock right there. Very gently at the very bottom, I'll pull it across just a little bit. And then take my brush and go right into a little bit of that sienna and white that I had. Maybe put a little indication of some highlight on that rock. Just kind of like that. And then go back to the knife with a little bit of that blue and white shadow color on there. We can cut that in half and show the water had interacted with that rock and had pulled away, leaving behind this remnant of a water line right in there. Okay. And so with that, what it does now is it makes it so the next step for my picture is just to continue on with little colors and things of that nature. So now to finalize the whole thing, I would really just use a liner brush, and I have what is known as this liquid white. You know, it's actually a Bob Ross material, and it's actually just a titanium white with some oils that makes it much thinner, and so it's a little soupier, and it just helps those lighter colors to stick right over the top of the other colors, and just makes it a lot easier to work with. So now I just take that liner brush, and I'll start out with just a little bit of that pure white. Maybe I'll just show the top of our wave right in here. Could show it coming over a little more action, going up into that wave hitting the rock. Maybe a little bit more of the fingers of the front of this wave, getting just the front fingers as it's coming over. Make that up a little higher there. And then taking a little bit of that color, I can use some of our Naples yellow, a little bit of the reds, and just now begin to pull in a lot of these beautiful little colors going up into our wave. So now it just gets into an area of just art, where you're just creating some beautiful colors and everything. And I've always tended to lean to that way when I paint. I'm not really looking for realism as much as I'm just looking for color and explosion of color and beauty and just having a little fun. I think just follow that passion is not always trying to be like someone else or do exactly what they're doing. But I always try to teach people is I guide you a little bit, but just have a little bit of fun. Just enjoy what you're doing. Have a little fun with it. Maybe a little more of the crimson. In water, sometimes it creates these really fun little patterns. It's kind of cool. Sometimes it makes like all these little round areas, these holes where the foam is breaking up, and it just becomes kind of a neat thing. There's a lot of people in art are out there taking lots of photographs and trying to create nature, but it's the same thing. There are lots of pictures on the internet, lots of things you can use as references, and this is what I do a lot with their classes. Just help to guide you in making these pictures. Okay, I'm not going to get too carried away with that. Just giving you an idea, putting a little color out here of what you can do. Maybe a little more of that color here. And so, get into painting. It's good. Good to have something to work on and keep you busy, keep you active, keep you looking beyond the narrative of the day. And so with a little brush, I just kind of continue on putting on a few little colors, maybe a little phthalo blue and white, maybe a little of that red and Naples yellow down here in the wet sand area, just to kind of pull some things together. But I mean, you could go on and on and on all day making details. And a lot of times on my own private time, I'll take the time to do things and create the movements that help to make each painting the way I like them to be. But for now, I would encourage you to check out things at the Florence Regional Arts Alliance and see what classes are available, and I would gladly like to see you in one of my classes. And so I'm John Leasure from Florence Regional Arts Alliance at 120 Maple Street in beautiful downtown Florence. And till next time, keep painting.